Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast. We're here on CBS Sports Network, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander's here with me, and we're going to be here for the next hour discussing the 2025 Final Four, set to get underway Saturday in San Antonio. As you likely know, all four number one seeds have made it for just the second time in history. Auburn, Florida, Duke, Houston. Norlander, if you don't mind, let's start with this. Imagine when this is all over, we have to make a film about this season. What's the best story? What could happen in San Antonio that would provide a filmmaker, a heralded one, with the best closing scenes of a story told from the 2025 Final Four?
Yeah, I need your cinematography takes like I need air, by the way, for sure. Can we dive real deep into and how we're going to shoot this bad boy here? I will.
I think we're going to I think we'll shoot the whole thing as a oneer. I just watched episode 2 of The Studio on Apple TV Plus, and now I'm a big fan of the oneer. So I think we would either have an opening scene or a closing scene, but somewhere in there for sure we'd have a oneer.
I think you need a good grip man if you're going to have a oneer. Okay, so variety of different options here. Let's just talk Duke. Talk through the Duke thing real quick. A lot of people would say not Duke. However, if Duke did win the national title and Cooper Flag was Cooper Flag as we've known him to be for the majority of the season in the Final Four in the national title game, it could, in retrospect, become could. Okay, I'm not saying it will. I'm saying it could. It could be the start of a really, really, really good NBA career that would have slight echoes. Okay, again, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I'm just saying the Michael Jordan story started at the Final Four. If Cooper Flag is going to be what people hope he can be, and that is to be a top 5 to 10 NBA player over the next 12 years or so, then winning a national title would be the start of a really, really good story. But that's not my pick. I think there's something to Auburn winning a national championship for the first time and Bruce Pearl doing it the way he's done it. Florida is not as compelling. School has a couple of back-to-back championships. Obviously, either SEC school winning it after this would certainly be something. For me, it would be Kelvin Sampson. It would be Houston as a program winning a national championship, doing it with this team. Kelvin Sampson having, had top 2 teams according to the metrics the 4 past seasons, and the journey that he took to get to this point, to do it in the state of Texas. Oh, by the way, 2 years ago, Houston was thought to have a really good chance at winning a national championship, but this program has never won one. It was a runner-up in 83 and 84. It was obviously a notable program in the late 60s to early 70s, but the best movie in the here and now would be Kelvin Sampson doing it. And, oh, by the way, doing it if it happened, where we've got Cooper Flag, Johni Broome, Walter Clayton Jr. This is a rare Final Four in that it's not often that you have the clear-cut 3 best players in the sport making it to the stage. In fact, you might not even be able to go back and look at more than 2 or 3 times this has ever happened. And yet, if Houston did it with no one that's a projected first-team All-American, that would be the best movie, in my opinion.
I could make a good Cooper Flag movie for all the reasons you pointed out. I could make a good Bruce Pearl movie for a variety of reasons, the way his career has unfolded. I think Florida, I want to be clear, would be a worthy and awesome national champion. But in terms of stories that turn into movies, out of these 4 schools, it would rank 4th of 4. It would rank 4th out of the 4. I think it's Houston and Kelvin Sampson. And I think for 2 different reasons. One of them is because this is one of the greatest programs to never win it. 7 Final Fours, 2 title game appearances, no national championships. So there's that. But then the other part of it, and to me this is maybe even the bigger part of it, is just the whole Kelvin Sampson story. It's just an incredible story. Grows up in North Carolina, the son of a coach. So son of a coach who becomes a coach. His first head coaching job is at Montana Tech. It's an NAIA school. Then, of course, he becomes the head coach at Washington State, Oklahoma, Indiana, and then at Indiana, because of NCAA violations that, with the benefit of hindsight, seemed like nothing, but sure felt like something at the time. He was forced to resign in the middle of a season when he had a top 10 team led by Eric Gordon. Like, that team could have gone to a Final Four, won a national championship. So he's fired, and then he ends up spending the next 6 seasons in some form in the NBA. Assistant with the Bucks, assistant with the Rockets. I don't want to say he was exiled from college basketball, but it kind of felt that way. And then he eventually takes over the Houston program in 2014. And that program, as we've discussed previously, was just left for dead. I had shared a clip from our Sunday night show when I was talking about what it was like to be a Conference USA beat writer and go into Hoffein's Pavilion and for the first time go, man, this is Phi Slamma Jamma. This is Houston basketball. This is sad. Nobody's here. Nobody seems to care. And I had people send me like pictures that they had taken from around the same time. And one man sent a picture and he said it was from Kelvin's first season. There's some thought that it might have actually been from the season before Kelvin took over. Either way, the sentiment's the same. You see basketball players on a basketball court. It's a home game for Houston. They're very clearly getting ready to play. And, buddy, there is nobody there. I mean, if you can find like 7 people in the crowd, you're doing better than I did. I mean, it's just completely empty. And that's the program he took over. Before he took it over, one NCAA tournament appearance since 1992. 0 Sweet 16 since 1984. Now, Kelvin has been to 6 straight Sweet 16s, 3 of the past 5 Elite Eights, 2 of the past 4 Final Fours. That's an incredible story, and I don't think we can have a better scene in San Antonio on Monday night than Kelvin Sampson, the son of a coach, now working alongside his son, standing on top of a ladder. In 2008, pushed out of the sport. In 2025, standing on top of it. That's pretty good. I could get excited about any of these teams winning a national championship, but that'd make a pretty good story, wouldn't it?
It would, and I'm going to just extend a little bit off of what we mentioned on yesterday's show. I'm not battling the cough the same way I was 24 hours ago, thank goodness. So when I talked to Sampson, I think he has now subsequently talked with a few other reporters about this, but I don't know if he had really gone into detail too much on the record prior to when we talked back in early February. So his time in Indiana ends, and I think it was on a Friday. I can't remember the exact day of the week. Actually, Kelvin walked it through me with all this.
I can remember. I can remember. It was 100% a Friday because it was 100% the Friday before the number 1 Memphis versus number 2 Tennessee game at FedEx Forum, because the plan was every national media member comes to my hometown. We're all going out on Friday night. And we did, but we all had to work on Kelvin Sampson stuff before we could even get to dinner.
There we go. Love that from you. So he tells me his exact words were something along the lines of, I was fired on a Friday morning, and 2 hours later, I had a job in San Antonio. So he and Greg Popovich got to know each other well because they both were working for Team USA basketball the year before, I believe, or some years before. It was actually some years before when he was at Oklahoma, not the year before, excuse me. And so they had maintained a friendship that is extremely strong to this day. Kelvin got his life together. I think like a week later, week and a half later, he flies to San Antonio. Popovich says, you have a job. Like, you're coming to San Antonio. I'm not going to let you just sit and stew and be ticked off at the way things ended at in Indiana. And he gets picked up in San Antonio. It's actually the day of a game. I think he said they were hosting the Pacers that night or something like that. And so Popovich is waiting for him. The way that Sampson told me the story, it was almost like he thought he'd be getting to San Antonio and either like they'd have a car waiting for him, or he'd call a cab or just hop in a cab, and he turns the corner and Greg Popovich is waiting for him there at baggage claim, which is just an awesome image. Pop's like, come on, let's go. They drive right to the team facility, and when they get there, it's like Sampson's in the back of the room. They're going through the walkthrough. One of the former 76ers coach, his name's escaping me right now. He's going through the scouting report, and he's hearing Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, and he's watching the team go through their pregame prep in a way that he had never seen before in his life. His eyes were like wide open to this whole experience there. He winds up spending a little time with the Spurs before he goes and works with Scott Skiles and takes his whole tour through the NBA. And the point is that Popovich, who unfortunately has not been able to coach due to health issues recently, he was the one that gave him a lifeline. And now it is all too appropriate that Sampson's next chance, perhaps his best chance, and I know the team that's standing in the way on Saturday night, so we'll see, to win a national championship will be in the city where he got his lifeline and coaching immediately after having a pretty ugly end and plenty of his own doing, by the way, at Indiana. And now, 17 years later, he finds himself back in San Antonio, 2 wins away from, as you were saying, a movie-like ending.
So you touch on something interesting there, and then we'll move on. I was asked earlier today, coincidentally, do you think this is Bruce Pearl's last best chance to win a national championship or Kelvin Sampson's last best chance to win a national championship? They're both older, obviously, than John Shire and Todd Golden, probably closer to the end of their careers than the beginning, obviously. And I said, on one hand, when you're in the Final Four, like, you're close to it. And yes, this could obviously be the last time you're ever this close to it. But both of those guys are running consistently successful programs. So, like, they could be back next year. And either way, both of them are just 2 wins away from it. That's very close. Most men never get this close to it. But to win it, and this is sort of the strength of the Final Four and everything we've been talking about, there ain't no tricking your way into this national championship. You have to beat 2 monsters. So, yeah, Bruce is close to it, and Kelvin's close to it. But whoever wins this national championship will have earned it, because however you got to the Final Four, whatever path you took, by the time you got to the Final Four, you had to beat 2 of the not just best teams in the country this season, but 2 of the best teams in modern history. That's the only way to win a national championship now, is to beat 2 of the best teams in modern history. And, I don't know if this will be the last time Kelvin or Bruce are this close to it, but they're obviously very close, but the assignment is difficult.
Yeah, I would say that.
Back.
Okay. I would just real quick. Go ahead. One, the coach that I couldn't remember is Brett Brown. It was bothering me that I couldn't pull it off the top of my head. Back with the Spurs, by the way. And 2, I think it's entirely possible that Kelvin Sampson and Bruce Pearl, and I think you agree with it, but just to the question that you got asked, if you told me they were in this spot again in the next 2-3 seasons, I would entirely believe you. I think that is still very possible. And judging of what I've talked about with Kelvin before, now if you win a title, maybe it changes. He does not feel close to retiring. Now, if you win a national championship, it can really alter things. But I do not believe that either of those coaches winning a title, if that were to happen next Monday, would actually accelerate their timeline, and we'd have a situation where Houston or Auburn were changing jobs. Coincidentally enough, both of those coaches have their sons as the top coaches on their staff, and Kellen is literally the coach in waiting. And with Bruce and Steven, I know that is an arrangement that they continue to work on, and hope that will be the case whenever Bruce steps away.
When we come back, Johni Broome is back on campus at Auburn, and he's sore, according to his head coach, Bruce Pearl. We'll give you an update on what BP said about his star earlier today on CBS Sports HQ. We'll do that after this break. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, CBS Sports Network. Bruce Pearl and his Auburn Tigers are back on campus. The Auburn coach joined CBS Sports HQ earlier today from campus and said, among other things, Johni Broome is sore, that he's not going to practice today, and that he does not plan to practice tomorrow in advance of Saturday's game in the Final Four. Norlander, do you think this is going to be a thing? Johni Broome, how does he feel? Is this something we're going to have to talk about all the way up into tip-off?
Might be a thing. I mean, Pearl literally said he has no injury. The quote is he has no injury, end quote. But so this, I guess, if we're taking Pearl at his word, then this is strictly precautionary. But it will be a plot point. I mean, this has been one of the 2 best players in the sport this season, and he is a key. If Johni Broome isn't at near a 100%, hard for me to see how Auburn, who actually I think has the longest odds now to win the title of the 4 teams left, not having him at full strength doesn't seem like it gives Auburn a great shot at winning the national title. But I do think that he'll ultimately be fine. And if Florida, Florida's going to put out just an awesome game plan. We know how Golden and that staff can scheme, but I do think that we should get a pretty close to healthy Broome. And if you tell me to guess what Broome's numbers are going to be against the Gators, I'm going to say 22, 13, and 5. 4 or 5 assists and a couple of blocks. I think he's going to show up and be awesome on Saturday.
Yeah, I do too. I imagine I'll get asked about it a bunch, and I'll keep saying the same things over and over again. It looked bad when it happened, but he came right back. He performed well when he came back. I know the next day can feel different than the day of, but if his coach is optimistic that he's going to play, and his coach is saying that there is no injury as much as we're just dealing with what we're dealing with, I'm going to assume he's going to be in the lineup and okay, and that if Auburn is eliminated in the national semifinals by Florida, it will not be because of what happened to Johni Broome in the Elite Eight. I think that's where we'll land. Whatever happens, happens, but it will not be tied to – I don't think it'll have to be a what-if story forever. What if Johni Broome never goes down briefly in the Elite Eight? I don't think it'll have that kind of impact on the Final Four, but as always, we'll see. Let's use this moment here, Norlander, because we talked about it, I think, on Sunday night. Disclosed that we were going to submit our ballots for first team All-American, national team, second team All-American, third team All-American, national player of the year, freshman of the year, coach of the year. They were due noon on Monday. We have submitted them. The votes have not been published yet, so we don't have to disclose who is going to be the CBS Sports National Player of the Year or the CBS Sports National Coach of the Year or the first team All-Americans. But I think everybody understands the National Player of the Year was going to come down to Cooper Flagg and Johni Broome. Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable disclosing your ballot? Because I'm comfortable disclosing my ballot. I've got nothing to be ashamed of.
Nothing. Nothing to be ashamed of? You've got nothing to be ashamed of right now?
I mean, I'm short and bald. Those are like two obvious things to be ashamed of.
Hey. No, I won't have any of that on this show. You do not need to be ashamed, no matter how short, no matter how bald you are. You do not need to be ashamed of that. You understand me?
You won't let me body shame myself?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You might have some stuff to be ashamed about. You still hitting those weird golf clubs, or did you move to full on irons here?
Oh, buddy, you don't even know. I can't wait to show you what you're dealing with.
Okay, let's get to the topic at hand. We will not reveal whether it was Broome or Flagg.
Now we sound like a presidential debate, just arguing about golf. We sound like a presidential debate, just two old men arguing about golf.
All right, let's get to the topic at hand here. The CBS Sports All-America teams and National Player of the Year and Coach of the Year and all that stuff will be announced, I believe, on Wednesday, no later than Thursday, but I think Wednesday is our target here. We have already had 3 National Player of the Year awards announced, and there are 6 traditional big ones, and Cooper Flagg and Johni Broome will split. We know that there will not be a sweep. It will not be unanimous. The Sporting News has already announced that Johni Broome is the National Player of the Year. Meantime, the United States Basketball Writers Association announced that it was Cooper Flagg, and I believe we had the NABC announce within the past hour that Cooper Flagg has won the National Player of the Year. So we wait on the likes of the Wooden Award, the Naismith Award, and the Associated Press. I will be down there on Friday, and I believe I'll be on hand there at the press conference for whether it's Broome or Flagg. I voted. This was obviously the toughest vote I have literally ever had. I voted for Johni Broome. My vote for National Player of the Year was Johni Broome. And how about this? I think Cooper Flagg's the better player. Like, I'm going to talk on CBS Sports HQ later today. I'm going to give my top 10 players in the Final Four, and Cooper Flagg is going to be one on that list, and Johni Broome is going to be 2. But I think that Johni Broome had the better season, barely had the better season. Points-wise, Broome 18.7 per game, Flagg 18.9. Rebounds-wise, Broome 10.9 boards per game, Flagg 7.5 rebounds per game. Assists, Flagg 4.2 per game, Broome 2.9. And then if you combine the steals and blocks, Broome this season averaged 3.0 combined steals and blocks. Flagg averaged a combined 2.7 steals and blocks. Ultimately, Flagg's team did win the head-to-head and had the benefit of playing that game in Cameron. Flagg had the better game head-to-head with Broome, but Broome had to play consistently much tougher competition. And I did take this into account. And again, I'm telling you, GP, this is like 50.2% to 49.8%. Johni Broome's numbers would be even better than they are right now, and they're really good, if he did not get hurt in the early part of 2 games, which essentially dragged his per game averages down ever so slightly, but nonetheless did. Like, he would almost certainly be at better than 19 points, better than 11 rebounds, better than 3 assists, and maybe even better than a steal per game if we're not getting hurt. You know, your per game numbers get hurt if you can play a combined 12 minutes over 2 games that otherwise you would have played, you know, a combined 63 minutes. So I did take that into account, and Johni Broome was my vote for National Player of the Year.
I voted for Cooper Flagg. And so this is interesting. Not only is the national awards going to be split, they were split amongst us. And I don't think there's a wrong answer as long as you're picking one of those two. You can, I could do 2 minutes right now and make a compelling case of why it has to be Cooper Flagg, and then take a break, come back and do 2 minutes on why it needs to be Johni Broome, and I could get you to believe both of them. They're both worthy national players of the year. I think Cooper just had a slightly. I agree with you, by the way. This was the hardest time I've ever had picking one. I don't believe in anything. Just make a decision.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't.
Somebody's got to be one.
Yeah. You have to make a choice. Yeah.
Make a choice. And so this is the hardest time I've ever had making a choice. I think Cooper Flagg ever so slightly had the better season. And if one of the points in Johni Broome's favor is that he did this against the SEC and Cooper Flagg only did it against the ACC for the most part, I understand that because it's true. Clearly, Auburn played a tougher schedule once the league play got started than Duke did, because the SEC was a monster and the ACC was the opposite of that. But I genuinely believe Cooper Flagg would have done this against anybody in any league. I think Duke would have been maybe not the same record, but would be similarly awesome in any league. So I know some people are like, you can't give it to a guy who comes out of that league, but we have had National Players of the Year from the Atlantic 10, from the Mountain West, from the West Coast Conference. We can have a National Player of the Year from this version of the ACC. So I went Cooper Flagg, but it's close, man. It's really, really close. We've had an awesome Player of the Year race. And do you think that's the premier title game? Like, if you're trying to make it as big as you can make it, it's Auburn Duke on Monday night. The two teams that have been 1 and 2 for much of the season, the two guys who have been battling for National Player of the Year. At this point, we can't, as a sport, do better than that, can we?
Correct. Now you're talking to a guy who picked Houston on Selection Sunday. I've got Houston winning the national championship. And I think Houston, any of these teams can win the title. But I think if we are speaking objectively, the most absolutely compelling national title to the entire sports audience that will tune in, it would have to be Duke and Cooper Flagg and Auburn and Johni Broome. And that would provide us a rare instance. I mean, if I have time on the flight tomorrow, GP, we'll see if I can get this done. I'd love to know how many times ever, period, the top 2 players in the sport actually squared off in the title game in the history of college basketball. And we are so far from guaranteed at getting that, because Houston can beat Duke and Florida can beat Auburn. Any combination of any title game is not going to surprise me in the slightest, but given that these two teams met earlier this season and the Broome Flagg race has been really compelling, it's one of the best ones ever. That would be fitting if we wound up getting to that kind of end.
When we come back, it's time for a flashback segment. We're going to take you back 10 years to the 2015 Final Four, a trip down memory lane. That's next on the Ion College Basketball Podcast, CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Ion College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network. Now it's time for the flashback segment, brought to you by TravisMathew, apparel designed for confidence and comfort no matter where the day takes you. Today, Norlander, we're flashing back to the 2015 Final Four. That's where John Calipari's best shot to get a second national championship and make history was derailed by the Wisconsin Badgers. The date was April 4th, 2015. John Calipari's Wildcats, led by future NBA All-Stars Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker, entered the Final Four. They had a 38-0 record. They were the favorite to win the national title and finished with a perfect 40-0 record. College basketball never had a 40-0 national champion. Kentucky was very close to becoming the first, but then Frank Kaminsky, Sam Decker, Nigel Hayes got in the way. They upset UK 71-64. Devin Booker only played 19 minutes. Frank Kaminsky got 20 points in 37. Sam Decker added 16 in 34. Simply put, Bo Ryan played his best players maximum minutes. John Calipari did not, so Wisconsin moved on, and UK's dream season ended. Then 2 days later, in the title game, Duke beat Wisconsin 68-63 to win the national championship. Norlander, what, if anything, do you remember about Wisconsin over Kentucky in that 2015 Final Four? We're flashing back right now.
We're flashing back. Quick question, as our viewers and listeners are aware of, your duties with CBS Sports Network now put you outside the stadium because you got to be up pretty quick after these semifinals and title games. Was this Final Four the last time you were in the building on the night of the title game, or because I want to say you were not in the joint with me when Jenkins won it at the buzzer in 2016? So was this the last time you actually were in the stadium when it hit 000 during a national final?
Okay, you have to tell me. Was I there? In 2015?
You were at the. I don't remember. I mean, maybe. Okay, you don't
I was
even
definitely
know.
at the Final Four. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm
I'm
at.
asking you, and you go, okay, you're going to have to tell me, was I there? I'm asking you.
Well, I was hoping you would. You have a better shot at like remembering a column I wrote from the 2015 Final Four than I do. All right. I know I have been to every Final Four since 2003, but was I actually in the building for Kentucky, Wisconsin, or outside of the building for Kentucky, Wisconsin on a television set? That I don't have an answer for you.
I think you were in the building. I think this is the last time.
Okay.
Because I want to say we talked beforehand. Hey, all right. Anyway, couple things.
I bet, if I was in the building, man, I bet that was fun.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I bet I had a good time.
It was this was a fun Final Four to cover for a few reasons. You had the Kentucky going for an undefeated season. I was in Cleveland the weekend before when Notre Dame got extremely close and almost beat Kentucky. So there was a little bit, and do you remember? This was absolutely a thing, and you don't remember. Why am I even going to ask if you remember? You don't remember, so I'm just going to tell you. Going into that tournament, a lot of people said the one team that is built to actually threaten Kentucky is Wisconsin, and Wisconsin did wind up getting it done. I remember sitting there courtside, and when the game went final and Kentucky lost 71-64. Frank Kaminsky took the ball, had it, and screamed out to kind of the Wisconsin fans. They were, yeah, make them believe. And that was their whole rallying cry was make them believe, make them believe, make them believe. That Wisconsin team was a ton of fun to cover. It was Frank the Tank. It was Sam Decker, who had an immaculate Yoshi impression that he did for me on the record that week because those dudes love playing video games together. Nigel Hayes was a ton of fun. Bronson Koenig, Josh Gosser, a lot of fun there. So the Wisconsin team was really good. And, oh, by the way, that Wisconsin team has the most efficient offense in KenPom history, or at least right now has the second most, because this season's Duke team is narrowly ahead of it. And really, it depends on how good Duke can be against the number one defense in the country, win or lose, over whether or not that Wisconsin team will still hold the position of the most efficient offense over the past 27, 28 years. Obviously, that Kentucky team, the Harrison twins, everything about that group. And a lot of it worked, obviously. Kentucky finished that season number one in KenPom, 38-1. But as you well remember, Devin Booker came off the bench, how he used the Harrison twins, Tyler Ulis, what he was doing as a freshman there, they had Cat that season. A lot of intrigue with that team in general. Duke winds up winning the national title with freshmen. They had Grayson Allen come off the bench, and he played well in that title game. Jahlil Okafor was one of the best players in the country that season. Tyus Jones, Justice Winslow. And then the forgotten team of that Final Four was a Michigan State team that made the Final Four as well. They just got absolutely routed by Duke in the national semi. So those are some of my memories from a very fun Final Four to cover in Indianapolis.
I bet I had a good time that year. I bet it was fun. I'm going to look back on it and see if I can spark some memories. The thing I remember thinking in real time was if you would have allowed me at the start of that NCAA tournament to suspend 3 of John's players, I get to pick them. He didn't get to pick them. I get to pick them. Let me suspend 3 of his players and cut his rotation down. He wins the national championship. I think Kentucky is 40-0 national champions if they just don't try to play all those people. Like, you remember, we got so many great players. We got to play them all. And I was like, I don't know, just play the best ones the most. That's Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns. That was the Flashback segment brought to you by TravisMathew. Apparel designed for confidence and comfort no matter where the day takes you. Appreciate, as always, TravisMathew being a part of the Eye on College Basketball podcast. Great clothes, great quality. I'm wearing it right now. When we come back, Trae Young has been named assistant GM at Oklahoma. What does that even mean? I'll ask Norlander that question next. We'll do it on the Eye on College Basketball podcast, CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball podcast, CBS Sports Network. Big headline this week. Trae Young, Oklahoma alum, NBA star, has been named an assistant general manager at the University of Oklahoma. Norlander, do you have a clear understanding of what that means? What does that mean exactly?
Of course, I have no idea what this means. Steph Curry did it first with Davidson, which is really cool. And now Trae Young's doing it. I do love the idea of Trae Young getting put on an email list and be like, "Hey, we need you on this Zoom Tuesday at 11:30. Can you hop on? Because we got to get into the nitty gritty of what we're recruiting." I don't know what assistant GM means to me. And listen, I want to make a joke here, but I understand that these players they're donating millions of dollars and they want to help their situations with their schools. But this does feel like a situation where the schools, because of a real relationship with their players, hey, can you just give us money and let us just say that you're working for us so we can get the best possible players, so we don't get our butts kicked in the portal? That's what's happening here as far as I'm concerned.
So, what an assistant GM would do in any sort of traditional sense is crunch numbers on a salary cap, evaluate players, consider trades. Do we actually think Steph Curry and Trae Young have any role in the roster building process at their alma maters?
This is the great question, because, all right, I'm going to flash back to last spring when we had Adrian Wojnarowski on the pod, and he is the general manager now of St. Bonaventure. But he told us he was literally in his spare time diving into the portal, looking at players, checking out video, trying to help Bonaventure. This is before he had his job and he was still at ESPN. And then he had a point where he's like, you know what? I care way more about this one thing than I do about what he would go on to describe as just vapor, just like getting scoops on player transactions that just, what is it for? Why am I doing this? And so do I think that Steph Curry right now is really following the 7 to 8 social media accounts that traffic and portal updates by the hour? I don't. I would love it if I would truly, it would bring me some sick level of joy if the Warriors had some sort of game and the guys are getting out to the locker room and Steph, we gotta go. And he's like, hold on, man. We're trying to get this guy out of the MAC. Come on. I would love if that was the case. I don't think that's the case. Please let that be the case. That being said, GP, I have a few more players who need to step in and do this as well. I need this to become a trend across the NBA and college basketball. I think 3 notable ones, programs that could so clearly just get that extra boost and it would help them in a major way. Anthony Edwards. No one even remembers this dude playing at Georgia, oh, by the way, but that's where he played. One of the biggest stars in the sport. If he can help him out. An obvious one.
I think on the list of things Anthony Edwards should be, quote, helping out, maybe the Georgia basketball program is a little lower than some other things. But that's another story for another podcast.
Regardless. Another one of these to be clear, some of these players, either publicly or privately, have helped their programs significantly financially and made donations over the years. But if we're talking about, okay, we want you to come on an assistance role, not even kidding. I fully expect Kevin Durant to do this at Texas. If he does not do this in the next year or so, it would actually surprise me. Now they just hired Sean Miller. They're not hurting for money, but seriously, that seems like one that could be good. Cade Cunningham helping Oklahoma State seems like one. Now I understand he's trying to get the Pistons in the playoffs and do all this kind of stuff. That would be good. And then another one that makes a ton of sense. And this guy's I was just on this campus in the past 2 months, and he's donated plenty. But if Draymond Green could get himself like in the later stages of Tom Izzo's career, if he wanted to come on in this kind of role, he really, really cares a ton about that university. These are some other ones that make a ton of sense to me. The ones that 20% of the league is Kentucky and Duke guys. They're not exactly hurting for this kind of stuff. As cool as it would be to see Kyrie take on another job and join John Shire's staff in an assistant's capacity, those schools aren't as hurting as much as maybe the other ones that could benefit from it.
One that stood out to me because, if you're an SEC school, a Big Ten school, you're not hurting for money. But outside of the traditional power structure, things can get difficult. Kawhi Leonard, San Diego State, a program operating outside of the traditional power structure that isn't set up to flourish the way a Big Ten or SEC school is, that's one where you could really benefit from having somebody who has benefited incredibly financially from his time at your school. Like if you could convince him to play a role in the future of your program, yes, with donations to NIL, but also just, being closely connected to it, that would be beneficial. Another program like that, and really I'm just thinking of programs outside of the traditional power structure who have superstars who went to school there. Memphis and Derrick Rose, although Derrick didn't leave Memphis under the best of circumstances, they ultimately had to vacate a Final Four because of his standardized test score. And then I think there was a moment where some Memphis boosters literally sued Derrick Rose. Was in the courts for a minute. And, so I don't know how a lot has changed since then. D Rose came back to Memphis and lived here, played for the Grizzlies. But if they could ever get him connected to that Memphis basketball program in a meaningful way, that would be awesome as well.
I got one more for you. And this one's, now that we're talking about this, I actually hadn't thought about it before, but this one's obvious. This player, I don't know if he's done it as much in the past 2 years, although if he did, it wouldn't surprise me. But I did a whole story on it a couple years ago before he had his major issue. Is there any single school that might not benefit any more? Curry's the number one example, but then John Morant and Murray State at that level, they've got such a huge, Murray, Kentucky you got to really want to get to Murray, Kentucky to get up in Murray, Kentucky. But John Morant, he used to work in pickup games with the guys, the players there. That's another huge one. And he is a vocal and proud Murray State alumnus. That's another obvious potential candidate. This isn't the easiest thing sometimes for these schools because they don't want to, they don't want to ask too much of their super famous, very busy alumni. But there are instances where these players, they genuinely care and want to help, and you aren't asking too much of them. They want to do this, and Curry doing this and Trae Young are two fine examples. I do expect to see more of this. I do think this will become something of a trend, and put me down for KD as among the most likely, obvious candidates to do it sometime soon.
Ja cares deeply about Murray State, supports that program and that university, and I think you'll see that increase in the coming years because there's some connections there now. You know who Murray State's new head coach is? Ryan Miller.
Yes.
Do you know who Ryan Miller's brother is? Mike Miller. Do you know who John Morant's agent is? Mike Miller. So this is all connected in some way. I would not surprise me in the least to see John Morant more formally associated with Murray State's basketball program going forward. We come back, one more segment to go. We're going to call it the Final 1-and-1. We're going to pick both national semifinals against the spread presented by FanDuel. We'll do that next. It's the Ion College Basketball Podcast presented on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Ion College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network. Before we get to what we're calling the Final 1-and-1 presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, make every moment more. Some breaking news, coaching carousel. Buzz Williams has reportedly agreed to leave Texas A&M to become the next head coach at Maryland. So Maryland reportedly wraps up its search pretty quickly, Norlander. What do you make of this development?
Yeah, this is even faster than Maryland was maybe anticipating, just tracking this over the past couple of days. Buzz Williams was identified as the most practical next candidate there. His name had been attached to some other vacancies, both this cycle and next cycle. This is actually an odd one I'm literally getting text in real time as we're doing this on TV here. It seems like it is going to be Buzz. I don't have it yet that it is actually done, but you could certainly do worse with this, and we're up against the clock here, so we don't have a ton of time. The intriguing part about this is there were definitely Maryland people that were not wanting to hire another coach that didn't have direct Maryland ties because they're tied. And Len Elmore had a letter he put out about this on social media on Monday. But Buzz Williams is pretty accomplished overall. And behind the scenes, there had certainly been rumors that he was certainly willing to listen to potential offers to leave Texas A&M.
All right, let's do the final 1-and-1 before we get out of here. Presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. What we're going to do here is pick both Saturday's national semifinals. We'll do them in the order that they're going to be played. First game, 6:09 Eastern, Florida against Auburn on CBS. Florida is listed as a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I will go with Auburn to win and cover in this spot. Broome to play healthy, and I think this has a potential to be just an awesome, tremendous game overall. Clayton's been incredible. Look for Denver Jones to be locked up on Clayton, and Denver Jones is one of the best perimeter defenders in the country. And yeah, I will go with Auburn here.
It's a reminder, that number, of how these two programs have been playing, heading in different directions as the NCAA tournament approaches. Obviously, once we got here, they both won 4 games to get to this place. But Florida and Auburn were operating at different levels heading into the NCAA tournament. That's how the numbers get to a place in the computers where Florida is actually now a favorite over the outright SEC champion and number 1 overall seed in this NCAA tournament. I, too, would take Auburn plus the points, Auburn to win straight up. Game 2 is going to tip around 8:49 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Houston and Duke. How awesome is Duke? This is the best answer to that question. Houston has won 17 straight games, outright Big 12 champs, Big 12 tournament champs. 12 of these past 17 wins have come against NCAA tournament teams, and Duke is still a 5.5-point favorite over that team. Which way you go here?
I'm going Houston. Houston's the better defensive team. Duke's the better offensive team. This is an amazing matchup. Cooper Flagg better well be playing against Kaman Malawach as much as possible in practice, because he has not faced a defender like JoJo Tugler this entire season. That is a different beast altogether. Tugler is good enough to give Flagg a real game. No, they're not going to completely shut him down. But Duke having that big of a number is way too big for me. Houston can shoot from deep. It's going to have a huge fan presence as well. Give me Kelvin Sampson and the Cougars to win straight up.
Yeah, I don't want to say that's too big of a number, because the number is the number. It's a sensible number based on how these teams have been playing and how this season has unfolded. But it feels like a big number against a Kelvin Sampson coach team. It feels like a big number against that team we saw just absolutely lock down one opponent after another on the defensive side of the ball, really from start to finish throughout this season. So is Duke playing like the best team in the country? Yes. Can I understand why Duke is a significant favorite over Houston and would be over anybody? Of course. But 5.5 points, Kelvin Sampson, I'll take the 5.5 points with Houston on Saturday. But like I've said many times over the past few days, there's no combination of outcomes that would surprise me. Shouts to Devin Downey, Chester, South Carolina, Terry Teagle legend, Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you subscribe. We'll talk to you again next time.